What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. It's another snowy day here in Minnesota. We're going to do some more car work. I have control arms to do and a wheel bearing to do on this little Saturn, and my buddy said that he had some time and all the tools and the equipment that we use to do it are at his shop. So I'm gonna go up there and we're going to put these, I'm gonna put these control arms in. But first, we're gonna stop at two of my favorite places. We're gonna go get Caribou and we're gonna get Brewers because they share the same building. Yeah, best of both worlds right there. Caribou and a Brewers. Does it get any better? No. Well, now that we got that all taken care of, it's time to get back on the road. And I bet you've noticed by now that the camera quality seems a little different. Yeah, filming on a Canon G7X Mark II. Picked it up yesterday, super excited for it. It's gonna make some awesome videos, so I'm gonna be playing around with it today to try to see what I can do. Sadly, I forgot my tripod, so I won't be able to get the shots that I wanted to get, but we're gonna make do with what we got. All right. We made it. He's not quite here yet. He ran to drop off a tire, I think. But he said I can go ahead and pull the car out of the garage that's in here right now, so we're gonna do that. Alright, so we got the car jacked up. This is the control arm right here, so this is the part that we'll be replacing. So, as you can see here on this side, this is our sway bar, and it goes right into the control arm. So in order to get that out, you have to pull that control arm in towards the car, and then you can pull the sway bar out of the control arm. Alright, so at this point, I took the hub off, I got it over here. This is the one with the bad wheel bearing. So, got the axle loose. There's our control arm right there. You can see I now have a come-along hooked up to the K-frame on the other side, which I'll show you right there. And it's tight, so now when you pull on this, you can kind of, if it'll focus, maybe. Well, you can see it's loose. So, now I just have to pull off that bolt right there, which is going to be interesting. Sometimes you have to cut it, we'll see. And control arm will come off, and then we'll be going for the wheel bearing. And it's out. I really think I got lucky on this one, because this bushing here that was in the K-frame there, it was so worn that everything was shaking around in there, so it came out really nicely. A lot of the times you'll end up having to cut that bolt out, and it's a pain. So next thing we got to do is we're going to put the new control arm right back in, and we'll get to this wheel bearing, put everything back together, and go to the next side. So one thing to note when you're putting these in is these bushings. So that one will go there, and then the one in here is going to go down like that, so that they're both flat on the ends. And then when you're sliding it in, you have to make sure that you put it in this hole as well as that hole at the same time. Otherwise, if you put that in and then put the bolt in, you will not be able to get it back on here. So then, so the little rubber bushing will go in. Okay, actually that will be the way that the washer goes. And then your nut. We'll get the nut on the inside of there too, tighten everything up, and then we'll move on to the wheel bearing. Alright, so here we have the wheel hub. You can see right here there's a snap ring that holds the bearing in. So I just got a nice little tip. You hit that thing with a punch, try to loosen it up a little bit, and take your snap ring pliers. You should be able to get it off a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll catch back with you in a second. Snap ring is off. That little trick worked a little too well because I busted one of the little eyes off the snap ring. But I was able to wiggle it free and get it out. So now that that's off, we're going to take it over to the press that we have here. We have all sorts of random little things welded together to do Saturn wheel bearings. So we're going to get it over there, and first thing you want to do is get this hub pressed out. So we'll show you that. Alright, so this is the setup for pressing the hub out. Looks a little sketchy, but I just tested it and it's going to work. So I have a socket on there. And then the biggest thing is you have to make sure that when this drops out, it has room to go. So it's got to be up high enough. So we got some pieces of metal that get it up high enough. So I'm going to go ahead and press this out and I'll show you what's next. Alright, so that worked out just fine. So now here's what we're left with. We got all of our bearings in there. Still a little bit of the bearing there. So I'm going to take a cutting wheel and just cut that off. And then you can usually break it apart and get it off. And then I'm going to get rid of these, clean this up a little bit, and then end up pressing out the rest of it. It's going to go through this way. And I'll show you that in just a second. So funny. So this guy that I'm working with, he sells all sorts of random stuff. And he actually just got a dishwasher installed in his house, so he was selling the old one on Craigslist, and a guy shows up and he's like, "Oh, you guys work on cars? Oh, I have one that needs to be worked on." All the time. All the time. It's like, who doesn't need a car worked on these days? It's crazy. Alright, so I was going to, actually I had that all the bearings pulled out of here, but I ended up putting it back in. So we've got this chunk of pipe that fits right along the outside edge of this so that you can press it out. So that's on there. I'm going to use, let's see, what do we got here? This is a socket. So we got a 1.5 inch socket here. It sits right on there. If this will ever focus, there we go. So it sits right on there. And then you can press it out. I'm gonna heat up this whole hub in hopes that everything will come out and not leave the outer race in there. Have a way of getting it out if that does happen, but we'll see if this maybe keeps that from happening. So let's give that a shot. Alright, so I switched up what I was doing a little bit here. The heat is working great, but I ended up actually turning the socket inside out and setting it back in there. And then we've got this piece of steel here, so I set this on here and then I was pushing down on it. And it's already broken loose, so I'm just going to push it the rest of the way out. And there we go. Whole bearing came out, still a little warm. And nice and smooth, so we're going to get that cleaned up and prepped for the new bearing. Alright, so we have the hub prepped, got our new bearing still sealed in the package, and for doing this we have another bearing that so the one edge is ground a little bit so that it can slide in here and then you can pull it back out. So you want to make sure that you keep your bearing sealed until you're ready to put it in. And then when you do put it in, try not to touch it with anything dirty or anything. I also lubed up that surface in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that set in and all set up. And I'll show you the setup and then I will get it pressed in. Alright, so here's our setup. You can see we've got that ground down edge right there, and actually it's sliding off. There we go. So that's better. I got something to push down on the bearing, and everything should be nice and flat, and then I'm using this as a base. So I'm going to go ahead and get this pressed in. You want to watch and make sure it goes in nice and evenly as you're pressing it, so that you don't end up pushing your bearing in sideways or loose, because I've done a lot of these wheel bearings and I have messed up a few of them, and if you push it in all funny, then you're going to end up just killing the longevity of your wheel bearing. So I'm going to make sure that this goes in perfectly, and I will show you once it is done. Okay, now that our bearing is all nicely pressed in there, you can see it's like perfectly where the snap ring is going to hold it in place. So I'm going to reuse my hub. We've got new ones too, but if I can reuse the old one, I usually do. So there's a couple things you want to watch for when you are going to press the hub into the new bearing. Now, this bearing, let's see, get us to focus here. So this inner race here can actually push out if you don't support that inner race. So we're going to use this new bearing again because it supports everything. Or this old bearing, sorry. The used bearing, the push bearing. So we're gonna use that one again to support everything while we push it on. You wanna make sure it's nice and level and flat, and just go really slow, make sure that it's gonna work, because if you push it out wrong, your bearing's just not gonna last. So, here we go. All right, there's our new bearing. Pressed in with the hub installed. One of the other things I did, so I went around and I cleaned up every mounting surface, because they get rusty, and might as well clean them up while you're here. And I have the air tool, so I like to take advantage of that. So now we got a new snap ring that's gonna get installed, and then we're ready to put it right back on the car. Okay, got the hub all put back together, new bearing installed. Gonna go ahead and just throw it right back in here. I'm probably gonna replace this tie rod end as well, because yeah, that it's kind of shot. Okay, so it took me a while. I ended up replacing the tie rod end on that side too, and it was a pain in the ass. So we are now on the driver's side. I have the come along hooked up to the K-frame, right on the sway bar. So I'm going to try to, since you can't see this, I'm going to try to just take that control arm out without taking off the entire strut assembly. So let's see how that goes. Okay, well, the way I had hoped did not work. I ended up having to cut it out, but we just got it out. It's been like 2 hours. So I'm gonna put the next one back in and get it all buttoned up. That was a lot of work. I did not see that coming. Just goes to show really that you could think that something on a car really is not gonna take that long, and then you dump your entire day into it. And yeah, I just didn't see that coming. But I'm happy it's done. It's something I've been pushing off for quite a while on this car. So it feels really good to have at least some progress done on my little daily. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this. If you learned something, give it a thumbs up, because I like seeing your support. I like hearing from you guys. It's really cool. So I am going to enjoy my ride home and relax a little bit. And so yeah, I thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.